If the old wives' tale is true that luck, bad and good, comes in threes, then Donald Trump is in trouble in 2025 as the third pass of Uranus over that midheaven would look potentially like the third time somebody attempts to cause him to be unalive. So we're going to talk about what might happen for Donald Trump in this What in the World Wednesday astrology report. What in the world is my mundane world astrology? And we'll talk a bit about the politics of Canada, in which we're set to have an election, battling a new contender for the Liberal Party, Mark Carney, against Pierre Poilievre, the Conservatives, or the Conservatives like the Republicans versus the Liberals, who are more like the Democrats, going head to head in a spring election, most likely. I might touch as well, just very briefly, on earthquakes and natural disasters. And I want to because we're in the energy field of a potential major earthquake, which is one of my 2025 predictions, but we're in that energy field coming up around February the 10th, add a couple of weeks. And I'll be, hopefully, this isn't stale news. This comes out on Wednesday, and I'm recording on a Monday. And finally, what about the planes falling from the sky? That also happened in threes, by the way. The Alaska plane that fell, the Philadelphia plane, of course, the helicopter and Black Hawk helicopter hitting the passenger plane. That was a threesome, but that also connects to the asteroid Icarus. When he is close to the sun, planes fall from the sky. I'll show you how and why as well. If you like this kind of world astrology, my name is Lori Lothian. I'm using the Western Tropical Zodiac. I love the minor asteroids like Icarus. The devil is in the details. This video should be no longer than an hour today, I'm hoping, because there is no all signs portion today. If you like all signs material about your story, check my weekly Monday videos that come out. My third Sunday of every month, I drop a 30-minute video for each sign of predicting the next month and giving you heads up and guidance to navigate your best life using astrology as a timing tool. And on Sundays, I also always have a drop of some big celestial event like an eclipse or some kind of retrograde planet turning direct. So you've got 2, 4, 6, 8 videos a month plus of your all signs content, and 4 every month of the world events. What I want to share with you before we do the Donald Trump story, and I want to explain the earthquakes, and then we'll do the Canadian politics last. What I want to share with you is that I'm teaching a couple of classes coming up. I'm excited about teaching a Venus class this year, and it's going to start on March the 1st, and we're going to do live calls, 6 weeks, keep the replays, create a Facebook group, and the whole intention is for us to track the cycle of Venus as she retrogrades in such a way throughout the sign of Aries and back into Pisces that really replicates 2017, and that is the spring of 2017, and the events that unfolded from that in our lives over the course of about 10 months. So we're back in a kind of rinse repeat, but this is very different. With Pluto's in Aquarius, Neptune and Saturn are in Pisces. The energy is not the same. In fact, events that occurred in the 1800s are repeating themselves now with Neptune and Saturn and a Neptune North Node conjunction not seen since the 1850s, all bundled up and messed into the story of this year and what Venus is doing in Pisces, because her retrograde takes her between fiery Pisces and watery Pisces and fiery Aries, and there's going to be a lot of that part of your chart that gets a heavy weight in the sky. So you want to know how to use it, how to handle it, what to do with it, and how you can participate in that sky. And this is an astrology class. This is not, for instance, you can come in without lots of astrology knowledge. You'll be learning astrology as we go. But this is a course that teaches you about the astrology and how you can navigate the astrology based on your sign. And you'll be learning how to cast your chart in that class as well. All right, so there's a wait list in the description link below. By the time you see this video, though, the sales page or the enrollment page may be open. So check below to see if the enrollment's open already, or you want to get on the early bird discount wait list. That link may still be under this video. Click the more button, more ... and there's a description box. I'll try to pin the Venus information to the top of this comment section as well. Okay, guys, let's get started. So first of all, no matter what you think about Donald Trump, and I'll be sharing some charts with you, no matter what your political stripes or opinions are, whatever, I'm Canadian, I'll tell you one thing. He is a disruptor. I had this conversation with a friend who's a diehard Democrat. I had this conversation with a commenter on my channel, and we're coming into a time when the United States is going to go through in 2026, it's Uranus return. This goes back to the building of the nation after the Declaration of Independence. It's already had its Pluto return. United States is in a death and rebirth throes. It's now becoming a new thing. And when someone like Donald Trump is in power, it's a disruptor. His sole mission is chaos magician. And so what we're seeing happen is chaos magician energy for something new to be born. In the throes of labor, the United States is doing a rebirth. Now, it's just a lot like the two Pluto returns of Rome, the fall of those Roman empires fell. The French Revolution, same thing happened. The return of Pluto to France's natal chart caused the French Revolution. Let them eat cake, Marie Antoinette, the peasants revolted. We're having the same archetype happening for the first time since the 1776 founding of the United States of America. Pluto is back where it started, and Uranus is coming back to where it started as well, with a flavor of that this summer and more so in 26. These are the times of reinvention of a nation, and it's not always easy. And there was a CBS poll that just came out, and I was watching the numbers, and the majority of Americans approve of Donald Trump so far, what he's doing, especially like almost 60% approve of his border policies. So while the United States is filled with very unhappy Democrats, they are outweighed by a true majority in the polls. And maybe some of those people in the polls are indeed Democrats who swung their vote. Now, the thing that most Americans don't agree with, apparently, only 14% of Americans think it's a good idea for the United States to take over the Gaza Strip. So they're 40% undecided and 47% think it's not a good idea. We will cover the Middle East situation on a separate What in the World Wednesday. All I'll say about the Middle East is I do not expect the second phase of the ceasefire, which is due to arrive in March, to happen properly because there is no goodwill, and the astrology does not support it. The first few days of April are especially gnarly with a Venus enclosure. I do think, however, we will see that war come to an end, but not in the way or the time of that 3-stage ceasefire. But it is like, what would you call it? When you cut a bouquet of flowers and they're dying on the vine, it is actually already without any sustenance to support it underneath, right? It's coming to a close. It's because the war in the Middle East, the conflict in the Middle East was incited by the eclipse that happened on the ascendant of Israel, a south node eclipse on the ascendant of Israel in October of 2023, just a couple of days after the October 7th events. And this kind of energy every single time throughout the history of the nation of Israel leads to a freaking war with its neighbors. Okay, so it's rinse, repeat every 18 years, and there's another subcycle of every 9 years with the North Node on its ascendant. Every which way you go, the North Node eclipse over the ascendant of Israel is when they pulled out of the Gaza Strip in 2007, 2008, all pulled out and then made it into an even tighter prison. And so there you go. We'll cover more of that coming forward. I realize I have no control. If anything astrology teaches me, I can observe and I can duck, but I have no control. So I can describe what's going on and what's likely to happen over there, and I have no control. So now, after weeping and gnashing my teeth during the entire geocide, I've just decided that I'm just here to talk about stories. I'm not here to change the stories. Okay, so let's talk about Donald Trump. Is he safe? I think it's going to be the title of the video. Is Donald Trump safe? No. Things happen in threes. They just do. Who knows why? Mother, maiden, crown, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. A tripod has 3 legs for stability. It's a feature of reality for some reason. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things. I'm going to show you the chart about Donald Trump. But before I do that, I want to talk just very quickly about those darn planes falling out of the sky. Does anybody know Icarus? This is where those minor asteroids are exceptionally important. Icarus fell from the sky because his wings were made of wax, because his dad, the inventor Daedalus, made the wings, and the sun did not realize you could fly with them, but you certainly should not fly to the sun, right? The sun will melt them and you will fall from the sky. This is when in May 19th, 2024, the president of Iran fell from the sky in a suspicious helicopter crash in a strange fog bank in the mountains. Yes, we know what really happened. Icarus was co-joined Mars. Mars is murder, homicide, bad things happening. In Aries, the sign of war. So Icarus fell from the sky under a Martian energy during that time. So I noticed that Icarus can do bad things with Mars, to do with falling from the sky if it's an act of war or if it's foul play. When Icarus is near the sun, planes can fall from the sky with no foul play involved. And so here we have January 13th, 1982. And at that time, you'll see that Icarus with the south node of loss was on the sun. And that's close enough to count, right? That's 7 degrees. That's a conjunction, was coming into the sun during the plane crash that happened over the Potomac River then. Do you guys remember that plane crash? Most of you probably do not, but there was a disastrous plane crash over the Potomac River of a Florida jet, and its wings were not de-iced properly. It was pilot error. It clipped the 14th Street Bridge, and it plunged in. 74 people aboard. I think 4 survived. So the lack of de-icing on the wings was the culprit. That was a pilot error not to turn on the de-icing switch or something on landing, or like something along those lines. Probably the Potomac River, twice over. There's something about a plane vortex there. But we see this is the sky under which it happened. And this is what I'm talking about. This is Icarus right here. This is the sun. This is the south node of loss and letting go. So clearly we saw that correlated back then. What happened this time when we saw the plane coming down with a Black Hawk helicopter this time around? Let's clear that drawing and let's show you the narrative. We're going to move us to the now. We're going to go just now, just for quick, and we're going to go back in time a bit, about a week. I'm recording this on Monday, February 10th, and there's earthquakes ahoy. I'll be talking about that after Is Trump Safe, Carney, Trudeau, and then earthquakes. That's the order of our What in the World Wednesdays. But here we have the story of the outside wheel. Let me save it. Okay. And let's pull it up. All right. So around February 3rd, I think the plane crash was on February 1st. I should know that, but 1st or 2nd. I think it was the evening of February 1st. I think. All right. So bottom line, hang on. I guess I should have the date handy, but my brain is forgetting. January 29th at 8:57 p.m. I actually did a little bit of a mini read on this before, but let's bring it up just as a standalone chart. I can create a chart that has it edited right to the time. So let's take in January 29th, 2025 at 8:57 p.m. And we're going to just quickly make that District of Columbia. I think it was a Virgo rising that day, but I'm not sure. District of Columbia, Washington. Now, the software never likes to cooperate with all these machinations, so let's make sure it does today. Of course, it's not. There's only one way to do it, guys. It's not really divine place, but the software doesn't like when I try to change the place. And so we'll just fix it again. It says Washington. Let's go for District of Cole. Wow. I will be right back. I'm going to fix this. All right, so watch Icarus. We're taking a look at Icarus here. There he is. So it was for United States, Washington, District of Columbia. It was a ascendant in the sign of Virgo. So in other words, Virgo was on the eastern horizon at the time of the crash in Western Tropical Zodiac. Let's put the ascendant in there. And basically, we can note that Icarus right here is with the sun. How close is Icarus to the sun, guys? Exact. Now, it's actually a lunation. It's actually a new moon. So we have a new moon It was exact a little bit of a few hours before the crash. And so we have Icarus on a new moon in Aquarius. It was at 9 degrees when it was exact, a new moon. Icarus is right there. The day of the crash, Icarus was at, and the time of the crash, Icarus, who fell from the sky with his melting wings, sat at 10 degrees and 39 minutes. The sun was at 10 degrees and 25 minutes. It's all perfectly conjunct. Mercury, news, information, but Mercury also represents people who talk with a microphone, a dispatcher. So air traffic control, death, Pluto, right? So it's all in the sky in the sixth house of bad fortune. The sixth house is called the house of bad fortune. So in the house of bad fortune, in comes a plane crash. And there's some consideration if you could read this chart if you want as a horary or as a chart of the moment, so to speak. And we could say that there are other things to look at here, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole today. One of the things I do want to mention is Jupiter is still in retrogradation, and he's at the top of the sky, and he can represent something like authority, some aspect of authority in Gemini that would communicate. And again, air traffic control communicating ineffectively to the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter could be a major piece of what that story provided the world. And there is also this energy when we see Icarus that close to the sun, right? That there is something that is overreaching, like there's an overreach because, I'm going to reach for the sun. And you could sort of suggest that, it was a stretch here to ask that a pilot, training mission pilot situation, for sure saw which plane air traffic control was pointing at when they said, yes, they had a visual, when then they end up with that loss of separation. This is a video I've already put out. This is where the minor asteroids will blow your mind. This is Chiron, the wounded one, asteroid Rebecca spelt with a K, and also asteroid Rebecca spelt with a C. And the pilot in training was Rebecca. Her name was Rebecca. And so we have Rebecca on shock and awe, Uranus. We have Rebecca on Chiron, the wound and the sign of war. She's a soldier. Chiron was the teacher, mentor, and guide for the warriors of the ancient tradition and the heroes. She was under the guidance of an instructor in the plane. So we have symbols of Rebecca here and here. That's Mars squaring Chiron, Mars, the god of accidents. It's, sad, squaring Rebecca on Chiron, the wound. So the only thing I'll say about this is that because Chiron, the wound, is in the 8th house, there will be a lot more to be uncovered about what actually happened here. There's a lot of information that we don't have or won't get for a month after the crash and even years after in the final report to know what happened. I would not be surprised if a lot of conspiracy theory continues to scuttle around this story. Now, what about Donald Trump? Let's take a look at what happened to Donald Trump, because I'm going to show you why I'm worried. Because what happened to Donald Trump was a Uranus-Mars story in July of 2024. I actually talked to everybody about that on my channel on a video about the Uranus-Mars conjunction, and I mentioned that Donald Trump would be in harm's way because of that Mars-Uranus conjunction on the star Algol on his midheaven, once in a lifetime conjunction. It happened exactly on the 15th that Mars and Uranus co-joined. On the 13th, Donald Trump was under peril from a bullet that happened to whiz by his ear. In a video I put out the day after this event, I noticed that the asteroid Angel was traveling through his first house, and he's born with the asteroid Angel on his moon. The moon can represent one's vital force, life force energy, also one's karma. So he is here with a guardian angel, whether you like him or hate him. He's got, he's Teflon, right? People always say, why? The guy's like Teflon. But physically a guardian angel, energetically, asteroid Angel was working some protective magic for him. Where is that asteroid now as he approaches the perils of this coming March, early second half of March, early April? Let's go ahead and take a look at his chart together. So I'm going to show you Donald Trump's chart. I'm going to point to what happened on September 15th. Also what happened on July 13th. This is Donald Trump's sky. He's a Leo rising. He was born with Apollo, a sun god, on his ascendant. What I cannot show you is he's also got the asteroid Angel natally on his moon. And he also has asteroid America on his ascendant. And actually, I can show you that one because well, just trust me that it's there. So he's born with Apollo, the sun god of America, on his ascendant. So sun gods, Jesus is a sun god. Jesus is a sun god. I know you guys are like, oh no, what is she saying? He's a Messiah. Jesus was martyred. Jesus died as a martyr. You are going to see that Donald Trump's code of Apollo, a sun god. In fact, what they did, the Romans, is they took the Jewish story of the death of the Messiah, the death of Jesus, the historical figure, and they overlapped it with the myth of Apollo, and they made it like, because Apollo was a handsome, kind of good-looking young, god, and they kind of overlapped the two so that they could get the adoption of the Christian faith amongst the pagan peoples. And so Apollo and Jesus have archetypal similarities. So Trump is born with Apollo right here on his ascendant, and asteroid America, which is right here too. Don't just trust me, it's right there. And his ascendants on Regulus, little king, born to rule, all power, glory, fame, and riches, yet fall from power, from pride and arrogance and hubris. One of the meanings of Regulus, the little king, which is a powerful star. It is an archangel star. It's a royal Persian star. The archangel is Raphael. Now, it's interesting, too, that Raphael is meant to be a god or angel of healing and connects to the Lover's card in the tarot. But this is an archetype of power, and this is a man destined for something fated to do with being a king, or in this case, a president of a major world empire. And yet with Apollo, the sun god here on his ascendant, at some point he may end up looking like a martyr. And that's another concern. When the actual attempt happened on his life on July 15th, this is the sky. So you'll notice that Mars and Uranus are together at the top of the sky. It will be 2 days later that is exact at 26 degrees. Mars is at 25 degrees and his midheaven is at 24. Midheaven is the vault of heaven. Did you know that the midheaven is more than just your career and purpose, but it's God's plot line for your life? Did you know God is his plot line? Did you know that it's the vault of heaven? And when you die, you can often see people passing away during transits, especially Jupiter over the midheaven. Trust me, I've had a lot of client charts because it's how we get out of the matrix. Okay, it's the vertical axis, up, and out from the IC at the bottom, the Immium Coli representing the midnight hour, this representing the high noon of the chart. And this is the axis of the world tree in shamanic cultures. And this is the way out, like the Truman Show when he knocks on the top of the dome. So, Jim Carrey in the Truman Show. So this could have been an end of his life, but Asteroid Angel was transiting over here. I can't add it with the software. It doesn't show up in this software. Trust me, it was. I used astro.com. Are you into the minor asteroids? I have a free course. Check my description box below. You'll get all the tools you need to find the minor asteroids in your own chart, including the names of your husband, your wife, your kids, your best friend, your high school boyfriend, girlfriend. It's all in there, guys. Most of it is anyway. So get my free asteroids course in my description box below. I've given away 5,000 of those courses. It's a replay. You'll learn a lot. Now, look at Apollo. He's having what we call Apollo return. Asteroids in general take approximately 5 to 7 years, sometimes 4 to 7 years to cross through the orbit the sun from the asteroid belt. So he's having a return to his Apollohood, whether it's to be sacrificed or his return to Apollohood is to become a sun god, which is a leader, right? Apollo represents a place in our chart where we can be a leader. So he's having the return of Apollo in the buildup to the actual election. Now, as much as you may not like Donald Trump, I want to share something with you, and then we're going to go back into the story. What I want to share with you is that no one likes Elon Musk lately, right? But Elon Musk is born with his ascendant and Mercury on the sun of the United States of America, on the dog star Sirius. In Donald Trump's solar return chart for the year of his election from his June birthday, he has his solar return ascendant on the dog star, on the sun of the United States of America. On the ascendant of Elon Musk. These two were destined to be working together at this time, a time in which Donald Trump's 1 year solar return chart, June to June, puts him in alignment directly with the sun of the United States of America and, ironically, the ascendant of Elon Musk. So whatever you think about this story, it was clearly a destiny play. Clearly, I have so much to say on this at an existential level. It's not funny. But when we get caught up trying to make changes to destiny and to twist the arms of the three spinners of fate, we're not going to get anywhere. So all of you who are destitute about the outcome of the election in your country, relax a bit. There's a divine order to everything. And you cannot make light and dark out of politics. You cannot make the Democrats the angels and the Republicans the demons. You just can't do that. There's dark and light in every human. There's dark and light in every political party. There's dark and light in everything, right? We have night and day. Our lives revolve around the cycles of light and dark. That aside, back to Donald Trump, after my little spiel there from an existential level, we know that he had one attempt on his life. We know that Uranus was crossing with Uranus, shock, awe, unexpected development, sky god. Someone shot him from a rooftop or something up high. Mars, guns, weapons, homicide, murder, assassination. You know, the whole gamut is a Mars narrative on his midheaven, more than on his midheaven. That's bad enough. Bad enough, guys. Bad enough. But it's also in a square to his ascendant. Squares are challenging. They are difficult. He's a fighter. Fight, fight, right? He got up and said, fight, fight. Why? Because Mars is on his ascendant. He's a sun god fighter. He sees the world as win and lose. Win and lose. That's his archetype. He also thinks of things as transactional. He wants to make a deal. He also wants to be liked. So he'd rather be liked for creating peace than hated for creating war, for example, because he promised peace. He said he'd bring peace. So now he wants people to like him for whatever reason. That's a priority for him. And when he's not liked, he's very venomous about that. So, you know, without getting psychological, I would never diagnose somebody just from the media reports. But, you know, sometimes you can count on somebody who wants to be liked to do things that he promised he said he'd do during an election because it means he'll be liked. So during the campaign, he did promise to try to de-escalate world wars. And I do believe he'll definitely get a handle on the Russian situation. And we were headed for a nuclear conflagration under the Democratic administration. I've got proof of that. I'll do another video of that. I'll show you why that was true. And that timeline has fractured. So what about on September the 15th? What happened then? Let's just take that into consideration, right? On September the 15th, we ended up with a situation, I'll put it in there, in which he was also almost assassinated by some guy with a gun in a bush on Mar-a-Lago's golf course, and he was intercepted and nothing bad happened. Why does it keep saying Vancouver, Australia in my software? I really don't know. I don't even think there's such a place. Okay. All right. Now here we have it. We're looking at September 15th, 2024 on our outside wheel. We see Uranus is still within a 3-degree orb of Donald Trump's midheaven, but now it's in retrogradation. Okay, forward, and now it's going backwards. That's 2, right? Everything happens in 3s. Now it's going backwards. So this is past number 2. Tip, it's going direct right now. And yes, it's still going to be square Donald Trump's ascendant. But as we approach December, this was back in September 15th. What else was happening in September 15th? It could look like he was in harm's way in any possible way. Well, just Uranus is enough to do it. But when we think of people who want to cause harm, we have Mars hidden from view, Mars, like the shooter, in a sign of his fall. So when we talk about someone in the bushes on a golf course, I guess we could say Mars hidden from view in the 12th house, and also because it's a hidden house, and also Venus, what we do for pleasure, a recreation. And he was on a golf course golfing, and that's one of his favorite things to do. And Mar-a-Lago, Mar is sea, Lago probably means, I don't know what Mar-a-Lago means, but Mar-a-Lago is like watery imagery, right? Mar-Lago could be lake, lake by the sea. So literally we have a water sign, Cancer, and we have recreation, golf. We have Mars with Mercury, news of some kind of, harsh energy going on here. Mars is definitely not very effective here. Mars has got a limp water pistol, and Donald Trump did not fall into harm's way under the influence of this story. Now, what's going to happen next? What's going to be happening for him in this spring? Let's just move the chart forward. I'm going to jump us ahead to March 21st, 2025. All right. So around that time, Uranus is exactly on Donald Trump's midheaven. You want to give that a week or two before and after. Uranus is moving direct. This is the third time luck or misfortune could strike, right? Lucky twice, to not be in harm's way. He escaped damage. He was okay. Is this going to happen the third time? It could be considered thrice misfortune or thrice luck. I don't know. But once again, back in the same narrative, squaring his ascendant, squaring his sun god, squaring the asteroid America. Now, also at the same time, Mars is still ineffective or weaker in the sign of his fall, in the sign of a water pistol. This is very Mar-a-Lago energy all over again. So can this be an attempt that fails, or would this be an attempt that succeeds? So the only reason that I'm particularly still concerned about whether the third pass of Uranus on the midheaven will fell Donald Trump, the reason I have a big concern here, I have a lot of concerns. But one thing is we have Pluto in an opposition to his Pluto, but Pluto in an opposition to his ascendant, of course. And that's an archetype that everybody gets once in a lifetime. And so that is occurring for him at this time. But the concern I have is the Leo full moon, February the 12th, 2024, the day that you're probably listening to this video. That full moon is square Uranus, and that full moon is going to activate Donald Trump directly. It's a full moon where his ascendant is, where his natal Mars is, closer to his natal Mars, but Mars ascendant conjunction, close to his Apollo, in his first house. Normally a full moon can be a good thing. It's going to be something coming to fulfillment, full fruition for Donald Trump, but it also represents completion, and completion in particular of things that began around the beginning of August when we had a new moon there. That was when Harris was trying to choose her vice president, and that's when he was trying to tell Harris that they should do a Fox News, September debate and change the format. But he was on the trail after having been clipped in the ear, and he was working the rounds. Now, the moon is squaring Uranus, right? The moon is squaring his midheaven. And a moon isn't just a day in the life of. A moon can last up to 6 months later. And add to that the Mars-Uranus conjunction is not also a one and done that happened exactly on July 15th for humanity, for all of us, for the first time in 80 odd years. This kind of thing of Mars co-joining with Uranus happened. You know what I mean? It happened 3 times, 21, 22, and 24 in our lifetimes, and it won't be back for another 80 years. Mars, Uranus, Mars, Uranus, Mars, Uranus in the sign of Taurus. It did correspond with the fall of, the Great Depression and the falling of the stock market post 1929. It corresponded with a time of rise of fascism as well. But now in Donald Trump's life, it's corresponding with his exit stage left, or up on the vertical. That's my laundry. So this moon is activating a very powerful, intense energy on his ascendant, squaring that Uranus, squaring that sun. And there are some interesting asteroids all mixed up in it as well. I'm not going to dive into that. All I'm saying is that if he's going to make it through the Ides of March, then we're looking at a week before March 21st, maybe a couple weeks after, where there is a lot of intensity. He has a stellium in March in the house of death, his 8th house. We got a pile up in Pisces at the end of March. It's in his house of death. And here's what I feel. I feel if he does have a second attempt on his life, it could actually be, rather than the deep state, which has been what's been going on, it still could be the deep state. It could be, Iran or one of the Middle Eastern countries, if he keeps pushing for the takeover of Gaza and the creation of casinos and all that stuff. If he keeps going in that direction, we'll see. I don't know where the foe is, but there's still a foe afoot. And if he becomes a martyr, becomes an Apollo figure, like a Jesus figure, a Messiah, a martyr, it wouldn't surprise me. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were both assassinated in 1968 when we had Chiron, North Node eclipses. And that's exactly where we are again. And everything in 1968 was like Groundhog Day, a DNC convention, the standing president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, deciding not to run again, hard issues or whatever, campus protests against the Vietnam War, just like we had them during this election season and the Gaza War with students in universities. We also had the fact that the vice president, Humphreys, for Lyndon Baines Johnson, took over just like Kamala did for Joe, and failed to win over Nixon, and Nixon was elected under the promise of ending the Vietnam War, but failed to fully do so. Just like Trump was elected by a lot of young people. In fact, his biggest cohort is 18 to 30, and men, but also women. Young people thought he might bring something new when it came to what the young people clearly see as a genocide underfunded by United States weaponry. How in the hell you get Netanyahu coming into the Congress and having a standing ovation? Seriously, with what's going on over there and no goodwill for peace? Yeah, I'm Canadian. I'm on the sidelines. All right, now we're done with Trump. Now you know why. Is he safe? No. Will this be thrice misfortune or thrice fortune that he escapes? If he doesn't escape, my concern is something like a coma. I've been seeing this image of him being not alive but incapacitated, and JD Vance is a mini-me, a prince in waiting, a king in waiting. His chart is like almost like Donald Trump, midheaven Taurus, Leo rising, and it looks like in his solar arc perfections, anytime between now and the next 3 years, JD Vance looks like he may step into the position of power. All right, solar arc directions. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the Canadian election very briefly, and the earthquakes. I bet you're bored because you're not Canadian, right? So let me tell you about the earthquakes, and I'm not going to show you the charts. It's literally the energy of the earthquakes. There's asteroid Typhon sitting on a part of the sky with Juno in watery Scorpio that can indicate that we're going to have increased intensity around earthquakes, including the February 12th full moon square Uranus in Taurus, which is a signal for earthquakes in the stock markets, in the crypto markets, and or in the real earth. And so in this regard, I'm going to say that one of my What in the World predictions that I'm recording on Monday that will continue to be in effect over the 2 weeks after the moon on Wednesday is a major earthquake. Stefan Burns, a great channel. He does a bit of astrology, but it's mostly weather, sunspots, things going on with the Schumann resonance. He calls it the Schumann, but I like Stefan. I'd like to have him on my channel. And Stefan Burns notes that there is a spike in the Schumann, a kind of high velocity energy that has been occurring. I'm recording on February 10th as of February 9th, and that we saw that energy just before the major earthquake in Turkey. In my video on the full moon, I covered, was it the full moon video or the week ahead video on Monday, February 10th, that came out today? I talked about a rinse repeat factor, that the last time we had a full Leo moon squaring Uranus in a T-square like this, we had within a couple of weeks after that, we had the big 7.8 quake in southern Turkey that killed 50,000 people. We're back in the same rinse repeat astrologically. That's what I got on earthquakes. Third topic today, Trudeau versus Mark Carney. If you don't know how elections work in Canada, let me explain what's going on. First of all, Justin Trudeau has been our prime minister since 2015. He came in on a promise of happy times or something like that. Happy times are here again. It turned out that happy times weren't here again. And he mismanaged the pandemic so badly that there was a lot of ill will. He also he froze Canadian bank accounts, anyone who participated in the trucker convoy or supported them financially. We also was trying to put a capital gains tax on corporate businesses just recently. He's big taxing a lot of spending, right? He also carbon taxes Canadians. Our gas, we have the cheapest gas. You in the United States get our gas cheap. We pay a ton of money for gas and oil because we're taxed a carbon tax because it's environmental, meaning we're being punished, but there's no alternatives. It's not like you're saying, okay, because you're not using the solar panel heating system that we have for you for free, or we have a ton of electric cars that are at your disposal. We don't even have the infrastructure for that here yet. There are huge taxes on Canadians. Canadians are suffering. There's inflation. People can't put food on the table. So he fell into the lowest ratings for a prime minister, and his party was set to have such a bad outcome in the election that's scheduled for October of 25 that he was forced to resign. And his finance minister resigned. And that was a scandal too, and said he was wasting money. So, and he was using gimmicks to buy Canadian votes, right? Like 3 months with no GST, no taxes on your food or your diapers. So what happened was he now is resigned in the sense, but he's still in power after March 9th, when Mark Carney will win against Chrystia Freeland and somebody Gould. 2 women are going to lose against Mark Carney. Called it in all my videos. It has to do with the astrology, the Sabian symbols and stuff like that. Mark Carney, he's a banker. He was a part of a Bank of England. He has a dual passport. He was a part of Canadians Bank of Canada. That's sort of like your Fed over there in the United States. But he still wants to keep the carbon tax. He's just going to tax industry. But if he taxes industry, then industry taxes the consumer. So, but a lot of people don't understand that. So he's going to pull votes away from Pierre Poilievre, who is a conservative, a diehard fiscal conservative, to cut spending, to cut government waste, to put money in the pocket of the people, to encourage investment in business. Also, Pierre Poilievre was running on an anti-woke platform. A lot of people, especially the Muslims here, are like, you can't tell our kids that they should transgender and not tell the parents, and give them transgender encouragement, and in the school system and stuff like that. And so there's a conservative values with the Conservative Party, and versus the uber woke, super woke politics of Justin Trudeau, and it to the point sometimes it defies common sense. And I think that was a platform under which Pierre Poilievre was running, which was common sense for the common people, and most Canadians, the majority, think that's true. We're like, you got to have some common sense here. You can't tax us when we're struggling with inflation. You can't punish us for driving our car. We pay so much more in gas than you guys do. It's like in the United States, you're using our gas and we're paying more for it. And also developing pipelines and getting our gas out to the rest of the world is a conservative platform that was shut down over and over again since 2015. We are an economy of energy, and our prime minister shut it down. Okay, so that's the backstory for what's going on in Canada. And now that Trudeau is stepping down, Pierre Poilievre has to face Carney, and he's going to lose a lot of votes. And I'm going to show you the chart of the two of them and tell you who will win. It could end up looking like, unfortunately, because a lot of Canadians are desperate for change, that although Pierre Poilievre will probably win, because this is the rise of the conservative energy that we saw in the 1930s with Uranus and Taurus, fracturing and shaking up the undergirdings of Taurian energy, which is conservative fixed energies. And I don't know. So it's most likely like there's everything swinging to the right. Politically, most countries are now electing right-wing politicians, and Canada will not be that exception. But rather than having a superior majority government, Pierre Poilievre could verge on losing the majority and have to be in minority government, which is very ineffective government. The election is scheduled for October, but it won't be. It will be called either probably by the Liberals, because they're doing well right now, because there's a Canadian zeitgeist about we can buy Canadian and forget the Trump tariff and rallying under this kind of common good. And that's boosted the polls for the Liberals just temporarily. And if they call election during a feel-good moment where we feel our government standing up for us, then that makes sense. So they'll probably call the election. They'll call the election after March the 9th. And sometime March, April, May, you have to have a 8-week election cycle, I think. So sometime in May, we're probably having an election. Let me show you the chart of Carney and Trudeau. And I also wanted to say this. I'm going to look at the chart next week of Baron Trump. I don't want to do that today. It's too much. But if you look at the charts of children, you can see stories about the parents. And I do have Baron Trump's chart in terms of how safe is Donald Trump. So we're looking at Mark Carney and not Justin Trudeau. I've looked at his chart so many times. He's already finally given up the ghost with a chironic wound and a solar arc, etc., to his midheaven. What we're talking about is Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre. Let's take a look at Carney's chart. I probably don't even need to look at both, just knowing one. But I rectified the chart of Pierre Poilievre, but I could be wrong. So rectification is a long process. So we will just assume we don't know for sure the times of either of the candidates. However, Mark Carney, March 16th, 1965. This is his sky for all my Canadians listening. I hope you're enjoying this. And look, he probably is something like this. His mother was a stay-at-home mom. He has dual passports and citizenships to England, and maybe Europe, and that's often true of people with Mars in the fourth house. There's a stay-at-home mom down here. It could be that this is his chart, and Pluto here often means a similar energy. You'll live in many countries. You'll be transformed by living abroad, whatever. This kind of vibe down there. Also, he was a banker. He was with Goldman Sachs for 15 years. He's worked on economic advising, Bank of Canada, Bank of England, et cetera, during Brexit, a lot of stuff like that. He's a very geeky guy, right? And you could put a lot of planets in his ninth house because he Harvard trained, economics kind of guy. Or you could think about his 10th house because Saturn rules both the eighth house of finances and banking, and Saturn rules the house of higher achievements and academics. And you can put Saturn in the 10th house to say he has had careers in both eighth house banking, industry, finance, markets, Goldman Sachs, and also legislative / advising. This is the house of the advisor to the one in power, the hand of the king. And he was an advisor to Trudeau. He's been in advisory roles for government. So he's either going to be truly, he's either going to be this. I think his dad was an educator, if I remember correctly. So that would be even better to put the stellium in the ninth house and make him a Cancer rising. He's not particularly charming. He's at his best. I mean, the verbal fluency and ease of people who are Gemini risings is pretty daunting. He could be the more Cancerian, self-protective archetype. So I'm just not sure which it is. I really have to tell you, I don't know. So if I have to put in this, watch this. Let's pretend we know his time. Just giving it a gander. This is a very loosey-goosey version of what we would call a decent version of a rectification. But this could work because there's a midheaven in the house of banking, finance, and economic matters, right? Ruled by Saturn in the house of his training and also being the hand of the king or the one to advise the person in power. And in that sense, he's a utopian guy. This is a house of humanitarianism, and the goddess of values is here. And he wrote a book called Values, Making the World a Better Place or something like that. Let me look at the name of his book. So I'm liking this chart for him a bit better. What was the name of his book? Okay. Independent of the name of his book, which is a utopian, humanitarian, higher, he's a practicing Catholic. In 2015, he was named the most influential Catholic in Canada. He's definitely got a stellium in the ninth house. Okay, that's his chart, close as I can get. Plus the book he wrote. And he wants Canadians to change their lifestyles rather than, on Jon Stewart's program, he argued that Carney attributed much of Canada's emissions to oil industry, which he argued must become cleaner rather than ordinary Canadians changing their lifestyle. So he wants to clean up the oil rather than force Canadians to not use it. Okay, that's not bad. And he wrote a very utopian book. Lord knows where I'm going to find that data for you, but it's like Values, Making the World a Better Place for Everyone or something. And that was 2021. But when you add the Catholic, we got to have ninth house planets. So he's likely like a Cancer rising. And it's interesting, we can say that as a Cancer rising, then, is he likely to attain power? Well, certainly some Cancer risings can attain power, but the sun is in the ninth house of the hand of the king, the advisory role. People who are going to rise to great power will need some kind of really oomphy energy in the 10th house. But because we're just guessing about what his rising sign is, let's go back to the basics. He had an eclipse on his sun at 25 degrees. That's Dionysius on his sun, the god of wine and the fermented grape and ecstasy and Dionysian things. He probably is a party man or loves his wine, exalted Venus Dionysius. He probably is a wine sommelier or loves his wine. So chironic wound, he may have studied something in university that wasn't really him, could be that. But Chiron is the advisor and the mentor archetype. And again, to what? To those people in power. So 10th house people, kings, queens, heads of state, heads of organizations. So when I look at this chart, independent of knowing his birth time, what would I say says, yes, just in the general sky story coming up this spring, the guy's a golden ticket to win. What would make me want to say that versus not say that? That's where I'm going with it. And there's his mom, by the way. That means travel too. Lots of travel in his life. Of course, he's done lots of travel because he's lived all over the world. Well, first of all, we have eclipses up here and his sun was eclipsed. Now, and a North Node eclipse to your sun is not necessarily a bad thing. It can mean an escalation of prominence and attention to your career and purpose in life. And this eclipse happened on September the 8th, 25th at, no, September the 18th at 25 or 26 degrees of Pisces. So this is a positive indication of more prominence. Of course, he was on the Jon Stewart show and you got some celebrity there and he's, getting more press. So there's a rise of acceleration in his career story with an eclipse, North Node eclipse to the sun. And the eclipse to the sun on the North Node, etc., was lunar. So there's a spotlight on him. That's what it means. A spotlight on him and his career. It does not mean he wins. It does not mean he loses. We don't know his midheaven for sure. He was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Canada, FYI, March 16th, 1965, maybe sometime in the morning. Who knows? He's 59 years old, and that's the 12th house profection age during the campaign or the transition to being in a leadership race. That's the same thing that happened to Kamala Harris when she was foisted into the vice president's role. She was 59 years old in her 12th house profection age, which is a behind the scenes house. He has a past life, North Node Apollo, as a sun god or a leader. Will he do it again in this lifetime? Well, it is squaring his sun. In fact, that could be an ominous sign of a no. At the bending of his nodes of fate, he has Venus and Chiron. There's something about this life where he's aspiring to spiritual higher values connected to his faith as a Catholic, to humanitarian values, to wanting to truly see the world a better place. So if it's really in the 9th house, which I believe this is probably his chart. Now, I did rectify Elon Musk as a Cancer rising long before his chart became public. So this stuff can be useful to know it works. Okay. Now, the other thing I'd say about this guy is that there's that Algol story that's been, his Jupiter is more like where JD Vance's Jupiter is, if I remember correctly. I mean, midheaven is, but he has a little bit of Uranian jolt going on here with Uranus close to that spot, but Uranus has kind of moved past it. And I think that's what's propelled him to already be in power over the last 2 years, a lot of opportunity coming for him to increase his success in his career gains. But is this a winner chart? Well, is it a winner even if I don't know where his sun is? That's what I'm trying to assess. There's a lot going on in Pisces at the end of March. There's a stellium there, but Venus keeps getting enclosed between the malefics. And there will be another eclipse in the sign of Virgo coming up this spring that could be a harbinger of a opposite of a success story, okay, as well as an eclipse in Aries. The eclipse in Aries around 9-10 degrees is going to occur on his Mercury in his house of public reputation. It's a solar eclipse. Mercury, the messenger, Mercury, the speaker. He's going to be out speaking, campaigning, is involved in a solar eclipse. Is it good or is it bad? Solar eclipses just mean intensity around the activity in his 10th house. Mercury being eclipsed, however, is also the ruler of his 3rd house, communicating, speaking, traveling, stumping, going on media and social media. That's not positive when you're campaigning to see March 29th, eclipse to Mercury, the ruler of your basically campaigning house, your 3rd house of communications and meeting the public and going on social media sites. So that doesn't feel as good as it would be if he was going to be a winner. That's my thought, just a thought. Mercury also rules his house of past lives and things he's been doing in the backroom deals and negotiations of his life. So I'm not dazzled by this chart, even if I don't know the houses. And I just say, what about ending up, because I can't tell you what houses Mercury rules if I don't know his birth time for sure, right? So I can simply say things like, wow, he's got an eclipse to the part of his chart that says, I speak, I talk. He's had an eclipse to his sun, which has brought him to prominence. And then there is the eclipse in Pisces coming up in March as well. And let me look at the exact degree of that eclipse. Give me a sec. I'm going to pause the recording. Let me just do that. I can't pause this recording while I'm with you unless I stop the share, which is annoying. I'm going to look at the eclipse degree. Can't remember the March eclipse degree and Virgo. And then we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at Pierre Poilievre and we're going to be done. All right. Lunar eclipse, Pisces, March 14th. That's what I'm thinking of. There's September eclipse in Virgo. Lunar eclipse, March 14th, Pisces. Where in Carney's chart roughly would that maybe show up? Hang on. So basically, up there with his sun at 25 degrees, the lunar eclipse is showing up in this part of our sky. And it's going to be a total eclipse, not a partial eclipse. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I anticipate this could appear as for him. He's the kind of person where if I see an exalted Venus, and I don't mind exalted Venus, because people who are in exalted Venus, they have a kind of higher love ideals. They're looking for some kind of higher love, unconditional love, a connected love amongst all beings. Also in India, men who have exalted Venus tend to marry and end up celibate in their marriages. Just saying, I'm not prying into his life. But in his chart, there is a possibility that this is an eclipse, therefore. 23 degrees of Virgo. 23 degrees of Virgo. I don't know what's wrong with my brain today. I didn't sleep well. I woke up really early. I've had like 5 hours sleep or something, but 23 degrees of Virgo. So, but opposite the sun in Pisces at 23 degrees near his exalted Venus. Okay. So it is a Virgo eclipse. My brain is working because it's lunar. It has to be a Virgo eclipse in the springtime. So the energy of his exalted Venus is going to wake up a bit because of this eclipse. And it's going to activate a sense for him with his Venus at almost 20 degrees, 19 degrees and change, of something he is striving to achieve and complete, where the sun is sitting on his Venus opposite a 23 degrees moon that is totally eclipsed. Now, at 23 degrees in Virgo, he has no planets. Okay, I don't know what house it's in, but he has no planets right at 23 degrees. But he does have his moon at 15, and the moon represents the people, the populace, and the public, and how you appeal to them. He has his moon in the house of his joy, if his chart is right. And that is why he would have been somebody who was capable of writing a book, and often, papers and briefs, and probably lots of writing. The guy's Virgo moon in its joy life. But that lunation at 15 degrees and the actual lunar eclipse at 23, it's going to blot out his moon, right? It's going to also connect to his lunation. So to have a moon that's going to be eclipsed, and it's not a full moon, he's almost a full moon baby, independent of what sign this is in. He's not a full moon. He's a helper moon. He's a waxing gibbous moon. He's here to try to be of help to people. And also waxing gibbous moon people have a huge amount of sexual energy and need to be in partnership. And he's been married to his wife forever. So it looks to me like this is a no-go. He will not win the prime ministership. He will then be the opposition leader, but he will not be the prime minister. I'm calling it for Pierre Poilievre. I don't know if I even need to look at Pierre Poilievre's chart after this. Honestly, I'll save that for another video to keep this timely. I've looked at Pierre Poilievre's chart in the past. He looks like he's on a tear for some great success at this point. All right. I just kind of feel like a lot of you Canadians out there are going to be disappointed if I don't whip up Pierre. No time. I rectified him as possibly a Cancer rising, and that's why he's got such conservative home and homeland values. However, he may also be a Leo rising. No, he doesn't have great hair, but he used to have a brill cream hair, and now his wife has helped him fluff it up a bit. But he does have hair, so he could be a Leo rising as well. So I'm not really sure which he is. So not knowing a birth time for Pierre Poilievre, I will say a few things, and I don't know for sure that his midheaven is in Aries, but if you look at his fighter, he was always a fighter. He was considered to be a bit of a bully, and some people still think he is a bully. And his Mars is in Taurus, the bull, right? He could be this chart as well, but independent of knowing where things sit for him, right? And then we'd be two Cancers fighting off each other, right? Carney and Pierre Poilievre. What makes me think he might have a stronger chart is what I was getting at. Okay. Well, first of all, he's having a half modal return. The North Node is activating his South Node, and the South Node is activating his North Node. Nodal returns and half nodal returns are extraordinarily powerful. And in this regard, it's even better than having the North Node amplify your sun. So he's in a very fated and destined time of his life. Something is trying to happen here. Something big is trying to happen. Now, the other thing about this chart, and we want to talk about, the possibility of the age factor, because I do profection ages. He is in his 45th age, and 45 is the age. Let me double check my math. 2024, 34, 40, 45. He's 45 years old until his birthday in June. The election is happening before that. 45 is the age of ascendancy into one's career success. We don't know which house it is. It could be an Aries, 10th house. It could be a Taurus 10th house. I just don't know. I'm almost inclined to put him as a Leo rising just because his strange Brill-cream hair, and of course, Jupiter means leader. I did put the asteroid Zeus in the mix here. He's got Zeus in the house of work. I forgot where it was in Pierre Carney's chart. But if I go with this kind of idea to be a leader, to be on top of some mountain, on his ascendant, roughly, we don't know the time, but in his first house, gives him a Trump-like quality, doesn't? A lot of people are afraid that he's too much like a Donald Trump or a JD Vance. But then it puts me in mind to say that he's got this energy of expansion of North Node over his midheaven. All through mid 23, all through 2024, his ascendancy began. He got the leadership race and won it, and he became the leadership of the Conservative Party. And then he ended up like hammering at Trudeau in Parliament and ended up winning the hearts of the people, or the people preferred him over Trudeau. And he's been rising in populist public appeal ever since the eclipses began to activate his midheaven, and particularly the eclipse of April 2024 at 19 degrees of Aries. If his midheaven's up here, probably is the one that did his ascendancy rise to where he is now. However, we don't know for sure where his midheaven is by degree. Just know that Aries could be his midheaven zone if he's a Leo rising. Then that puts this idea of him being a very strong, sort of conservative, values Taurus, Venus in the Taurus values up here, and Mars is his champion warrior, but also what people consider to be kind of a bully approach to things. He's very critical. He's kind of smarmy, funny, but not, when he criticizes, he carbon tax Carney, and he gives people these kinds of like these little, Trump does the same thing, guys. Trump gives people these nicknames, right? And he gives people nicknames all the time, which makes me think he's a Leo rising, and he's performative, and he's a good speaker, and he's got charisma. I think he's probably a Leo rising. Pluto in his 7th house means powerful, rich people, just like Trump, want to support him. They do. He's got super funding. The Conservative Party is funded more than it ever needed money. Like in Canada, we have spending limits on campaigns, but the Conservative Party fundraising machinery under Pierre Poilievre has led to the thickest, biggest coffers for the party that has ever existed, according to reports. So he attracts the money. He pulls the money in, as Trump has done too with the oligarchy, the tech bros, etc. Now, with the eclipses moving through this part of his chart, right? North node, south node, this can be second house is the job you do, the money you make from the job you do. Or if I flip the script because I don't know what his real ascendant is, I could make that his third house of, being on social media, going around, talking, campaigning, and stuff like that. So he's got this increase of the nodal energy in a balanced way. So it's also kind of bittersweet. Sometimes a full nodal return is you rise to the highest levels of success you wanted to attain, a full nodal return. A half nodal return, like this one, south node on his north and vice versa, means you win at the game of success with some moderation or disappointment. And that would be, he was poised, had the election been called when Trudeau was in, to win a vast majority government, sort of like Trump has done, even bigger than Trump's majority. And it's not likely to happen. He will squeak by in a win more likely, or he will win a less of a majority, or he will not have a majority government at all. But I still think he's going to win. And certainly having Pluto in Aquarius and a whole sign trying to his natal Pluto powers him up in a positive way as well. And his sun is in Gemini, and we know that Jupiter's up there in Gemini. And having Jupiter in Gemini all through this year has powered him up to the next level of success. I just don't know for sure which houses all this stuff is happening in. This is why he's a great debater. Mercury in Gemini on the sun. He's a ferocious debater. He eviscerates his opponent. He makes sense. He's extremely intelligent. Algol is on his Venus. Algol, it's not right there. Algol's at 26 degrees, but the Uranus energy has been in his 10th house, electrifying his 10th house. And when you have Venus in the 10th house, you can have a great deal of popular appeal. And he's considered to be a populist by the people in Canada, like Trump is. So this is looking like his chart. This is looking like his chart. I'm going to go with him as the winner. Next time I look at this, when the actual race is on, Carney will win the leadership race. I don't need to look at Chrystia Freeland and the Gould lady. They're going to be disappointed. They're not going to even be in the running. They've raised money for nothing. However, when it gets down to the election itself, what I will do is I'll take the natal charts of, Canada and other factors, and I'll compare the two again as we get neck and neck into the race. I'll look at the solar arcs for Pierre Poilievre. I'll look at the solar arcs for Carney. I'll look at solar return charts, etc. This is just a cursory look. To me, it's going to be a closer race than I would have preferred. I'm ready for some change in Canada. I just incorporated finally last year, and then Trudeau comes up with this new tax on small businesses to incorporate. I have to create my own pension fund. I don't have a pension fund. I don't get an employer paying my taxes. And so this new tax on capital gains for corporations, small little people like me, and we're not talking about like Amazon, we're talking about little bitty businesses and the big ones, really didn't hit a good chord for most Canadians. In Canada, all doctors are incorporated. They're little mini businesses. That's how they create their retirement fund. And again, that's not a popular thing. Carbon tax Carney pulled it back. He says he's not going to do it, and the Canadian government's pulled it back because of the election that's pending, but they don't care about the people. They spend the money in Canada. The Liberal Party has completely been fiscally irresponsible and filled with a ton of scandal, guys. So anyway, enough of that. I've never voted in my own country. I've never voted in the United States. It has to do with moving to the United States with my kid's ex-husband for 18 years. And so I couldn't vote there. And I didn't vote there, and I was away from Canada, never got invested in the politics. And so I've been apolitical, which is good as an astrologer to be apolitical. Will I vote in the next election here? Maybe. Maybe I will. All right. Thanks for listening. That's What in the World Wednesdays. And we're going to cover topics as they arise, what's in the breaking news cycle. I will try to get into the Middle East situation and the Russia thing. And someone asked me for information on Serbia and student protests. I couldn't fit that in today. I will get to that when I can. I have to investigate what the hell is going on in Serbia. Someone asked me to talk about the United Kingdom and its election, whether they're going to have a general election this year. I will do that as well. I think that you guys aren't happy with the person you elected. Is that correct? And we'll do some dirty dirt digging on Macron and Bridget, whether she's a man or what are they hiding there. That's just a very saucy topic that's going on right now. Okay, ciao, everybody. Have a great week ahead. Hopefully no one's been in the shaking of the earth.